First Amendment Auditor Liberty Troll, whose channel I have to admit I was not familiar with before I saw this video, posted yesterday an interaction that he had with Osceola County, Florida Sheriff's Deputy Mike Heller. Liberty Troll was apparently detained while just out jogging. With that in mind, we're going to get into Liberty Troll's video, talk about what went right, what went wrong, and see whether this deputy did a decent job at respecting Liberty Troll's rights in the process of conducting an investigation. Let's get into it. What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Southern Draw Law. My name is James White, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, former police officer. Most of the time when we cover law enforcement interactions on this channel, it's because everything went wrong or a lot of things went wrong. And the reason for that is because there aren't a lot of opportunities to explore how things should be done unless they were done improperly. But every once in a while, we come across a situation where it wasn't all that bad. And even though it wasn't all bad, we still get an opportunity to sort of explain how things should look. Let's check out the video and then we'll come back and talk about it.
This a white guy, maybe about 6 foot, gray tank top, black shorts, maybe salt and pepper hair, looking a little suspicious.
Had a few runners, but we always got runners over here.
Yeah, always. Nobody that made your hair stand up and say, "What's that guy walking around for?"
Yeah, cool. I always got people stopping, looking. What is he doing? What is he doing?
Cool deal, man. Thank you, brother. Thank you, man. That's over to white male at Norfolk and Pollard, closely matching the description. What's up, buddy? How are you?
How are you doing?
Good. I'm Deputy Heller with the Sheriff's Office. Quick question. I know it sounds crazy. You live in the area?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you happen to step foot on anybody else's porch, patio, where you didn't belong in the last 20 minutes?
No.
Okay.
Is there a jogger walking around doing something?
No. They claim somebody wearing a gray tank top, dark colored shorts was on somebody's patio over there.
Nope.
Okay. You happen to have ID on you, sir?
No, sir.
Okay. You mind if I grab your name, date of birth, just confirm your identity so I can move along?
I'm actually a First Amendment activist, so I'm going to have to turn that down.
Okay. Well, then at this point...
Unless you suspect me of a crime.
I do. At this point, we're going to wait on the photo, and then we'll go from there. Okay? You have every right to execute your constitutional right, but you're in the immediate area. So, therefore, we're going to just make sure that we get the photo and go from there, all right?
Nothing personal.
It's not a problem,
I'm
sir.
not against cops or anything, just so you know. My name's Jack, by the way.
Mike, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Like I said, man, we got a call of somebody jiggling somebody's door handle on a porch.
I understand.
So
I'm a First Amendment auditor, so I just don't give, you know, personal information unless I committed a crime.
It's not a problem. But once I get the photo, we'll be good to go.
So I'm being detained?
Tag 22, Sierra 12. You are, sir.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you mind if I get your badge, sir?
We got that photo yet? 2948.
Thank you.
54.
Did I pronounce it Heller?
Heller, H-E-L-L-E-R. Tag 22 to web. Can we get that photo? The gentleman out with his First Amendment auditor. I just want to see if it's him. If not, he'll be moving along.
Remember that under the Terry versus Ohio standard, in order to conduct an investigatory detention, an officer has to have reasonable articulable suspicion that criminal activity is afoot. Now, I'm not saying you have to be a bootlicker, and I'm not saying that you have to praise the police, but it's important that as a community, we recognize the difference between, you don't even have to say good investigatory detentions, but acceptable and legal investigatory detentions, and improper and illegal detentions. A lot of people get confused about what it actually means to have reasonable articulable suspicion that criminal activity is afoot. People think you have to say, well, there's a specific crime you have to suspect this specific person of committing. You don't actually have to suspect a specific crime. You can just suspect that the person is involved in criminal activity. Now, you have to be able to articulate what criminal activity it is. For instance, just from the basic understanding of the facts here, I can think of trespassing, burglary, vandalism, and loitering and prowling that all exist within Florida law that are specific crimes that could be pointed to in this particular instance.
Is your body cam on, sir?
It is, sir. It's our policy.
I know, but I just like to see police officers actually follow their policy.
Sir, I've been doing this for 15 years. Times have changed. I get it. Obviously, if you called us and told us and someone matched the description in the immediate area, I would do the same to protect your property and your rights. It's not a problem.
What do you think of, let me ask you a question. Polk County doesn't use body cams or dash cams. What do you think about that?
I don't have an opinion. I don't really work with them. I think there's people that abide by the rules and are honest in every profession. And I think there's people that don't abide by the rules and are dishonest in every profession. And that's from politicians to doctors to lawyers to cops to teachers to guys that play in the NBA and NFL.
Cool. So you believe in transparency and accountability within our government?
I think that's the only way.
Good. Good for you.
But I mean, you know, it is what it is. I mean, you sound like an educated guy, right? So then you're well aware that the opioid epidemic clearly started by crooked doctors that were overprescribing, you know, painkillers and the oxys and all that. So, you know, we have just a perfect example of good people and bad people at every profession.
What I like about what the officer is doing here is that he is not being accusatory. He's having a casual conversation. He's not being pushy. He asked for the ID, that failed. He accepted that. He understood what his boundaries were. And so when you're looking at these situations, my approach is, okay, would I rather have this officer doing this, or would I rather have another officer detaining someone in handcuffs? Because if you can detain somebody, most of the time you can detain him in handcuffs. Would I rather have this guy handcuffed, sitting on the curb, waiting for a picture, having his actual liberty physically impeded? Or would I rather have him be free to stand there, not feel like he's being treated like a criminal, have the officer just kind of checking a few things, having a casual conversation? In my mind, I would rather have it play out like this one is playing out. Whether I'm the person who's being detained or whether I'm the person who's watching on YouTube. Where a lot of people get messed up is that they think, well, you know, loitering and prowling or criminal trespass or all this stuff, that's the stuff that cops who are out harassing First Amendment auditors want to pin on somebody to make it fit. That's a different scenario. This officer is very clearly not trying to make the person's conduct that his ego has a problem with fit the factual scenario. He's trying to determine whether the person that he's interacting with is the person that he's looking for, and he's waiting on a picture to try to confirm whether it is or isn't. So the pictures, I'm assuming, come from surveillance camera. And I saw in somebody's comment on that, wouldn't you wait for a picture before you do A, B, C, or D? The answer is no. I mean, you're never going to get a concession on the idea that you have to wait for every single piece of information to come in before you start investigating. If the person they're looking for has jiggled somebody's door handle 5 minutes ago, maybe that's all he did. Or maybe he committed a homicide 3 doors up and he's working his way down to the next house. And so you don't have to wait for every single piece of information before you start investigating. And if you start investigating and you have somebody who matches the description, there's nothing wrong, legally speaking, with going ahead and vetting that person and making sure, okay, we got this person out of the way, this is not who we're looking for. Let's get back to it.
You mind if I ask what you do for a living?
Right now, I'm just the First Amendment Auditor.
Gotcha.
You know what those are?
I do.
Cool.
Do you write for any type of, you have a website, a TikTok, or
all over social media.
Gotcha.
I'll probably give it to you once this is over.
Cool deal.
I feel like.
Cool deal.
Do you watch any particular auditors online?
No. I mean, I don't have, like I said, I don't have any issue with wearing a body cam. I have nobody holding us accountable. I have no issue with expecting anyone in law enforcement, any facet of it, doing their job and doing it correctly, and doing it by what we stand for and what we stand behind. But I think a lot of them are antagonizers.
Yeah, there's some of them that are.
You know,
there's, just like you said, there's rotten apples in
every profession, every hobby, everything. You know,
right.
I mean, just like
not that this is a profession per se. It's more of it's a civic duty. I think every American should do something.
Absolutely, 100%.
And promote transparency.
100%. You know, I see a lot of them where they go into public buildings and they're recording.
Yeah.
And they go the whole route of, you know, that a city hall or a tax collector or a post office belongs to them as a government building. And I can see that belief, but I can also see the belief that that's not accurate. Because if somebody was in a government building and again, I'm not saying this is their end goal, their belief, or what it is, but your documentation's on someone's desk. For example, you filed for a permit to have a tree removed or to have your roof done. That stuff should be protected. Now, I agree that that employee should protect your information by not having it sitting out on their desk or whatnot. But if you were at the DMV we're not passing secret notes, right? So if you're applying for your driver's license and you don't live in state and you're giving them information, like handing them your old driver's license or your social security card or that stuff. So I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
me personally, what I do is I try to stay. I don't try to get too close to like the countertops where you can see over people's shoulder. They call it shoulder surfing. I don't do any of that kind of stuff.
Of course.
But if somebody respectfully says, "Hey, I got my social over here. Do you mind?" Yeah, no, not a problem. But if somebody's being demanding and saying, "Hey, this is my right to not be filmed in public," well, then that's an education moment. There's no expectation of privacy.
Of course.
I'm very respectful and polite when I do it.
And I would say it's, I've learned in my years on this planet that one person's perception is another person's reality.
Now, I thought this was kind of an interesting exchange, and I think this is a universal truth. If somebody tells you that they understand how something works, if you give them time to explain their understanding, or if they're willing to offer their understanding, the longer that they talk, sometimes the more obvious it becomes that they don't actually understand the thing that they said they're talking about. So, one, I thought it was smart the way the officer asked the question, do you mind if I ask what you do for a living? Not, you even have a job, or what do you do? You're just out here trying to get likes and clicks. And so he says, I'm a First Amendment auditor. Do you know what those are? He goes on to try to explain some of the issues that he has with people going into public buildings and, the misunderstanding. So as the officer sort of explains, probably unintentionally and confidently displaying his lack of understanding of how that works. But again, he's not being a jerk about it. He's just, letting you know. And if you pay attention and people keep talking, you'll figure out that they really don't know what they're talking about. If someone says, I'm a blogger, then you might say, oh, do you write for a newspaper? Or I'm a journalist, I'm a print journalist. Oh, do you write for ABC&D? I'm a First Amendment auditor wouldn't initially trigger somebody who understands what those guys do to think that they write. And so that was kind of a peek into his mind. He doesn't really understand it. He also doesn't want to seem like he doesn't understand it. You can tell by listening to this officer talk that he does have an ego. He is very confident, and he's probably right there on the border between confident and cocky. But I think that under a different circumstance, this guy could be exactly the type of person who takes that flawed understanding into a government building, in a police department, or a place where he thinks that people have an expectation of privacy. Even though he says that he understands that it's the employee's job to create the privacy, he still evidences that he might actually think that the auditor is in the wrong in that situation. And sometimes they are, because not everywhere is a traditional public forum, and not everywhere is somewhere you can just go and record simply because it's public property. Let's finish up and watch how he handles the end, and then we'll come back and close it out.
So you have people that, I've taken some classes and some stuff where we could have 100 people stand here and watch a chicken run across the road. Yeah, I got it right now. Let me just grab my work phone. Text me 2012. It's not going to be the gentleman I'm out with. You're good to go, Zach. Zach, right?
Yes, sir.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you, Mr.
Best of luck.
Was it
Deputy
Officer?
Heller.
Deputy Heller.
Yes, sir.
Nice to meet you.
Yep. Well, you mind taking a look at a photo, seeing if
sure.
you've seen this guy in the area? Like I said, gray tank top, dark colored shorts. Clearly not you.
You weren't lying.
No, sir. No, sir.
All right, well, be safe out there.
Listen, I've been doing this entirely too long to...
One more question for you.
Yes,
so
sir.
If you see someone on the side of the road and let's just say someone called the cops on him let's just use the First Amendment auditing, for example.
Yes,
so
sir.
if you're ever caught in a situation like that, and somebody calls the cops, hey, we got some asshole, running around here taking pictures and video inside of a building or government building, it's a public lobby, for example, and you show up, are you going to ask for that person's ID? And if they turn that down, would you keep pushing to get that ID?
If there's... So, detainment as opposed to consensual contact.
Right.
There's not a reason for detainment.
Right.
There's not a reason for ID.
So you understand the whole reasonable articulable suspicion thing, right?
Sir, I've been doing this for
Okay.
17 years in
all I wanted to know.
2 states, sir. So, appreciate it, man. If you happen to stumble across that guy, if you don't mind giving us a call.
You got it.
Thank you, boss.
Okay, so again, contrast this interaction. He's still accomplishing the same thing. This is a smart police officer because he's just having a non-accusatory conversation about whatever pops up under the sun. It doesn't feel like a detention, even though it is. Zach's doing a great job because he's not acting defensive. He's not doing anything to escalate. He's just sitting there. He's doing what the officer asked him to do. And I'm not saying that you should always do that. I'm not saying that you don't have a right to be defensive if there's a different situation at hand. So if he was out doing a First Amendment audit and he's got a F the police sign and this interaction happens, we might have a different disposition on him than what we have right now. When I'm saying this stuff, guys, I'm not talking about like what I think or, what I think doesn't matter, except for I'm trying to help people understand how the courts would see this. All I try to do is look objectively at the facts and look objectively at what I think a court would do in a given situation, and that's what we're talking about here. But again, I don't really care whether he's an enormous douchebag outside of work. I care about whether or not he manifests that personality in the course of using his authority under the color of law. I don't care whether he's a douchebag or he's the meathead in the gym that slams his weights. None of that shit matters to me. All I care about is what he does with the badge. That's all any of us should care about. I thought it was interesting that Zach asked him the question about what he would do if he encountered a First Amendment auditor. And at first when I heard the question, I thought, well, that was kind of a silly question because he just showed you that he wasn't going to force the issue and try to get the ID and all of that, except that the First Amendment auditor pushes a police officer's buttons in a way that's different than this type of thing. Even though the more serious investigation is one where there's somebody potentially trying to gain access to somebody's home, that's not always treated with the same sort of seriousness by police officers because it's not something that triggers their ego. Whereas a First Amendment auditor out seen as antagonizing and pushing buttons and that kind of thing is someone who will push the buttons of a police officer's ego and potentially get an escalation out of them. So it was a fair question by Zach in retrospect because even though he just had an encounter with this guy and this guy did not push, it's also fair to understand that there's a difference in these type of encounters. I like the fact that the second that he saw the picture, it wasn't, oh, well, let me get your ID so I can, note who I was out with. None of that. It wasn't any of that stuff, and that's what you typically see. For the most part, this guy did a pretty good job. I like the fact that he showed him the picture. I like the fact that he gave him evidence that he was actually investigating something that could have been a potentially serious crime. In closing, what a lot of people think along the lines of what a police officer needs in order to do an investigatory detention, in their mind, the standard they're actually describing is probable cause. And guys, reasonable articulable suspicion does not require much. It was created as a standard below probable cause. It can't just be a hunch. In other words, I'm walking around, I see this guy wearing shorts and a shirt, and he's jogging, clearly standing on the street corner, he looks like he's working out, looks like he's up to no good. That would be a hunch. But to say, okay, I've got a crime reported over here. I don't know what kind of crime yet, but the homeowner is calling. He's a complainant. He's saying, this is the person, I'll send you a picture. He's actually investigating what someone is reporting as a crime. The courts are going to hold this every time. Every single time, there's never going to be a court that says, no, we don't want that officer to do that. They want this officer to conduct this investigation. He didn't handcuff anybody. He didn't use force on anybody. He didn't give any directives to anybody. He didn't demand anything from anybody. All he did was try to keep it as cordial as possible, do the business that he felt was necessary to do, cut the dude loose as soon as he was satisfied that that wasn't him. So again, he did all of the things that we would expect a police officer to do. Reasonable suspicion based on articulable facts. Here are the articulable facts. At 10 a.m., whatever, in this 2-block area, a person called in and said, there's a person on my deck that's not supposed to be there. They're jiggling my door handles. I don't know what they're doing. They're wearing a gray tank top and black shorts. They've got salt and pepper hair. The deputy makes an approach and he talks to somebody first. Hey, have you seen anybody out here like this, right? So it's not like he just stopped with this guy. He's actually conducting an interview with somebody else. So he's trying to undertake an investigation. He's not just running up to the first guy he sees and pointing fingers and accusing anybody. He walks up, he says, hey buddy, how you doing? Real easy going. Nothing to alarm the guy, nothing to say, hey, sit on the ground, come over here, put your hands on the cart, none of that. He just, hey man, how you doing? I'm Deputy Heller with the Sheriff's Department, blah, 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 blah. Like, he knows how to talk to people. He knows how to say things in a way that doesn't immediately put somebody on the defensive. Crazy question. I know this is going to sound crazy, but, you weren't on somebody's porch or somewhere you weren't supposed to be in the last 20 minutes, were you? No. All of this stuff comes into the totality of circumstances and makes sense for a reasonable detention. Again, The second that the officer should be pursuing the investigation the entire time and trying to have his suspicions dispelled. The second that the suspicions are dispelled and he's satisfied that this person wasn't involved, he should release them from detention. That's exactly what he did. We have to be careful as a community that we do not fall into the temptation of being unreasonable all the time. Incrementalism is the most powerful process in life. Nothing happens all at once. We didn't get to a place where law enforcement had this enormous power over us and we had all these tyrants out here doing these type of things in one day. Rome wasn't built in a day. We didn't start to lose our rights one day. Those rights have been eroded one day at a time. Just like a muscle starts to develop atrophy if it isn't used. So when we push, we have to be the community that says, hey, look, I realize you're not going to train a police officer from way down here to way up here with one interaction. It has to happen in stages. And when we see a police officer who is doing it pretty much the way it should be done, if it's going to be done, we can't allow those among us who believe that no police officer should ever do an investigation or ever detain anybody, or, essentially you've got people out there that just disagree with Terry versus Ohio, and their whole position is, well, it's not legal because it's not in the Fourth Amendment. They ignore the fact that the Supreme Court created reasonable articulable suspicion. Yes, they did cloth. No, I don't like it. No, Terry versus Ohio was not a good decision, but it is a decision that will govern everything that law enforcement does until it's overturned, and I don't think it's ever going to be overturned. So the loudest voices in our community have to be the reasonable among us, because if all you do is complain and all we do is say all cops are bad, everybody's a pig, everybody's a tyrant, no matter what they do, well, people are just going to tune you out. And that's the reason that there's never been a situation where a lot of this has gotten any traction. And in the process, serious issues and serious progress that could have been made in criminal justice reform was completely abandoned because people that were the loudest voices in that movement were so unreasonable and violent that it was easy for people to just dismiss what they were saying. And so if you're going to call and you're going to air your grievances to these police departments, and what you do with that opportunity is you threaten to burn down people's houses and you dox them and you do all these extreme things, it's not representative of reasonable people who are genuinely concerned about the overreach of law enforcement. And if we want to be taken seriously, we have to move somewhere towards the middle such that we can accept incremental positive change and progress. Otherwise, no one's ever going to take us seriously. Anyway, that's all for this one, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you got something out of it. If you want to support the Southern Draw Law channel monetarily, I don't offer any type of memberships, but I'll leave my Venmo and PayPal link both here on the screen as well as in the description. Please remember to like and subscribe and leave a comment on the video. Check out some of the other videos on the channel and leave a comment on there as well. Until I see you again, take care. Always film your interactions with the police and keep your evidence to yourself.